So I was pregnant and realized all of a sudden, like everything that I thought of health wise didn't match up with what I actually needed to do for my body. So I've like always been such a health nut, and those fads of like low fat diets and, taking out all this sugar and this and that and all these things we see that's very taboo. I followed a lot in college, especially. And then once I started realizing I have what I need to do to fuel another human being inside my body, was totally different from what I did, thinking I was all like knowledge about all this health, which you really wouldn't until you start looking into it. And I started realizing like the good fats and, giving my body grace with things as well. And so I just dived into the kitchen. I started creating recipes and at that really vulnerable time in my life and putting it all into the kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
And, when there was all this stress, that's what I did. And then my friend told me, she's like, Alaina, we love your recipes so much. And, people kind of make a living out of this. I think you should do it and do a blog. Like, I think that would be really awesome. And at first I was like, no one would care. I think no one would care about my recipes. But I think that was like my way of putting my fear, like, oh, I'm afraid of being neglected. I'm afraid of, being people like making fun of it. I worry about people rejecting it. And like, I had already felt so much rejection during my pregnancy that I didn't want that to happen again.
Mm-hmm.
And then I just had this moment of like clarity of what was I really afraid of, not doing it and people thinking something of it, or me doing it for my daughter and for myself and it being something I love. Like, why would I not do it? Right. I kind of had to flip my fear and realize that's dumb for not even going for it. Like, what if I just never did it? I'd always have that in the back of my head. And so I remember just sitting there with my mom, like bawling my eyes out. I'm like, I have $60 in my bank account. I'm not spending it all on Starbucks. I'm not, I'm paying for childcare. That's one of my paychecks. I have 2 paychecks a month, and that's one of my paychecks. I don't have somebody else paying any income or anything with, child support or anything. I was like, what am I doing wrong? Like, I don't know what else I'm going to do to get myself out of this situation. And then I stopped throwing a pity party for myself and I listened to my friend and I was like, I'm going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember sitting downstairs at like midnight, like throwing together the worst website. Like, it was like purple and had like I had like no idea how to create a website. It was so ugly. But it was the first one I did. And I started just putting up recipes and creating my Instagram around it. And 2 years later, we're here. So
yeah, that's wild. I mean, props to you for sticking it out. I would imagine if you start working full time, I know how I felt when I started my job, and then like that gets thrown on you, and that's a lot.
Yeah.
So you're like making money off the blog now.
Yeah.
How long did that take before you got to that point? Because I would always think that a blog is something that you're kind of in it for the long run, and you do it more so out of passion at first, and then if you get paid for it, you get paid for it. So like, how did that eventually start monetizing for you?
Well, and you're so right, because and I love my family and they're so supportive, and so are my friends. But, again, talking about that crab effect, it was out of, love that they're like, you have no time and you're taking pictures of your food and you're not getting paid for it. Like, why type of a thing, like, we love what you do, but you really don't have this time, Alaina. And I'm like, I remember crying and like calling my sister. I'm saying like cried twice, but I cried to my sister. I was like, I feel like nobody believes that I can do this. And she's like, stop. Like, who cares? Do you want to do it? I'm like, yeah. She's like, okay, then like believe in yourself that you can do it and push yourself to do it. And so I had to just really shut that out. And it was hard because, you know, hearing them say that over and over, and really no one's paying me. It's been 6 months I was doing it, you know, about 8 months. And then I had a client who I remember called me up and they wanted me to do some cookie recipes. And I told her how much. She's like, so what's your rate? I told her. She's like, can I be honest with you? I was like, sure, which I don't think any company would ever do this, first of all, but this was like my swift kick in the rear end. And she's like, you're lowballing yourself so much. I'm like,
I was gonna
really?
ask, how do you know what to
Yeah.
charge for something like that?
Well, and at first I was learning, you know, and I think it, you have to have one, I don't think you can ever charge your, like, do anything for free. And I wish I would have never done anything for free, because the minute you label your work as free, people see your work as free. You know, like they don't take it seriously. They just think your work, yeah, it's free work, you know, like you don't, that's that effort, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want anybody to see myself like that. And I don't want to see myself like that. So you kind of have to, you know, like that fake it till you make it, or like, you know, like
Mm-hmm.
give yourself that, like you're worth this, right? And so she told me, and I was like, really? I just remember it was 10 times more than I had said to her. And I was like, oh my God, like, okay. And I remember she's like, so I'm going to charge you that much. And I was like, oh, you know, like trying to play it cool. Like
Yeah.
somebody else has just told me that on the phone like an hour ago. I was like, oh, okay, sure. Yeah, we could do this. And I'm like, oh my gosh, right? Like, I'm like, yes, sure. And so I remember that was the moment where I started taking myself seriously, because somebody else, even though again, somebody else, but it was nice seeing in that field that recognition of,
Mm-hmm.
okay, this girl has talent. I really like what she does. And now it's funny because I work with them all the time now. And now my prices with them have gone up because my skill level and things that I've produced
Mm-hmm.
have gone up, and I've grown with them. And it's so fun because that's happened with a couple clients I've had, that our contracts keep renewing, but they keep going up because my exposure is more, you know, my Pinterest, my Instagram,
Mm-hmm.
everything. But that also makes the price increase. I don't think that people really know a lot that goes into it. Like you said, like how you price it.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, with a lot of things I do, there's like recipe creation. And so you have to create the whole recipe and the ingredients that go into it. So, you know, you're paying for the ingredients, you're going shopping, you go and you get all the ingredients, you test taste it. Like I at least do it like 3 times to get it perfect. And then, you know, you're styling the shots, you're getting the props, you're shooting it. With the camera, like I invested in a lot of great hardware and software, things like that I could use, stands, my Canon camera, all that stuff, to get that quality shot, which charges more, you
Mm-hmm.
know, because it's higher quality, and takes a lot to edit. I do movies, I do reels, I do
Mm-hmm.
Adobe Premiere Pro
Yep.
and stuff for my videos for like Instagram and Pinterest and stuff. So even when you see like 15 seconds of a cool video, like a tasty video, you know, that you see and you scroll past and it's
Yep.
like took like 6 hours.
Yes, that's something I've noticed so much with this, is how much work goes into like just a simple social media post. And
Yeah.
you don't realize it until you're the one that's making it and putting the content together.
Yes. And you're like, if you just scroll by and you're like, you could just like it for a second, that'd be great, because it took me like hours.
Well, especially when like you put all this time and effort into a post and no one really recognizes it or doesn't get that much engagement, and it's kind of like, oh, this isn't
Yeah.
working.
Well, and see, and I think that's like, I took this workshop and they talked about like monetizing in different avenues and
Hmm.
not putting all your eggs in one basket. And I had been just doing Instagram and focusing so much on it. But it's so finicky. The algorithms change so much and it's
Mm-hmm.
so stressful. I was
Yeah.
like, I feel like it's a bad relationship. Like, I love you, Instagram rewards you sometimes and like shares your posts, and then all of a sudden like hates you. And I feel like
Yeah.
your reach doesn't, I'm like, this is
Yep.
such an unhealthy relationship. And so I started looking into Pinterest more, really working on my website traffic, working on my photography. And now, like, Instagram, I feel like is that nice portfolio for my
Mm-hmm.
food photography. But I do a lot of stuff just for companies for their website or for their recipes that they put out that has nothing to do with my site.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just doing it for them. So it's been that I'm like, by perfecting my craft, I now have a lot of clients. I don't do stuff just for me to share on Instagram, but for them, which has been a big money difference for me with my business. So,
Right. Since you have started monetizing, like making money off of it, I would imagine there's that added level of pressure. Does
mhm.
it, like, do you still enjoy doing it as much now that I mean, it's weird to say it that way. You think you'd like it more when you're getting paid, but it probably feels more like a job.
It
Does it?
does. It does, until I realized, and I think I actually had like a minor breakdown last week. And it was funny because I was like, oh my gosh, I'm about to come on this. And I'm like actually kind of having a panic attack about it. Not about the coming on here, but I think I have kind of a routine that keeps like everything kind of in line. And like, I wake up at a certain time, like I wake up, I work out, I make my list of like 10 things I'm thankful for. I write out my goals for the day.
Mhm.
I make our breakfast, like I do my routine. And I think that's like really helped me de-stress about it all too, and like keep everything in line. And if I didn't have this routine, I think it would seem like a lot more work, but I kind of have
Mhm.
this flow. And I noticed when I started writing down things I'm thankful for, I have a vision board of the goals of where I want to go. Like I have a planner out with like my goals for the month, um, what I'm getting paid from each client, when I do invoices, when I do like what the deadlines are, things like that. And I think when I see it like that, it makes me so happy because I
Mhm.
see I had, $60 in my bank account 2 years ago and was crying to my mom. And a lot of people that were like, what the heck is she doing? And, they're still, and it's interesting. There are a lot of people who love the underdog and were totally there for me when this started. And now are,
Crickets.
I don't know where they are.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's so interesting. It's like now don't really, when you start like really trying to get somewhere, and then you see people who are like still supporting you, and like still have my two best friends who I don't care what I post, I could post the ugliest thing in the world, they're like sharing it on everywhere they can.
Yeah.
And so it just, I don't know, it's becoming such a passion of something that I love, and seeing that like I can make more than I can teaching doing this.
Yeah.
and and it's not all about the money, but I think I've felt so stuck and now I'm not. But I think that's what freaked me out, because last week I realized these goals that I had and these roadblocks that were in my way for the last 2 years all of a sudden aren't there.
Mhm.
And that freaked me out, because all these things that you're like, oh, if only I could do this. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, wait, I can do it. We actually kind of like self sabotage ourselves. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, like self
Mhm.
sabotage. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Like we start coming up with things to like make the situation bad. I don't know why as human beings we do this, but we
I
do.
think it's because we're like scared to actually
Yeah.
get what we're like hoping for,
Hmm.
because it's like so different than what we're used to.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And so then we start putting those roadblocks in the way.
Mhm.
And I had my best friend tell me, I said, oh, I didn't respond to this email I really should have responded to. And she's like, well, why you did that. She's like, because, if you would have responded, you could have it right away.
Yeah.
And you don't want, and you're scared about it. I'm like, I know. Why am I doing that?
Yeah.
Right. And so I this past weekend, I like just sat and I really just wrote out everything I still wanted instead of being scared, like being excited about it. And again, like I mentioned earlier, like flipping that fear, like what is it that I'm really scared about? And I think a lot of times the fear that we have, we get like attention from it. We get some sort of gratitude,
Mm-hmm.
satisfaction from it, either the attention from peers, like, oh, you can't do it. It's okay. You got it, or
Yes.
something you're yearning for, but that's not worth it,
Mm-hmm.
And so I think like, I just love it so much. And, seeing this future that I can actually have now, and the clients I have are like best friends of mine. Like
Yeah.
they're just so fun. And it's like there's no like drama. And then you
Right.
teach in a whole school of girls, there's drama,
Yeah.
and yet it's not drama-y. And I love it because I don't want to be around the drama. I don't have time for it.
Yeah.
And so being around people that are appreciative of your work, there's no drama. And there's no, like, I love my kids, but I have so many people like, Miss Hinkle, Miss Hinkle, Miss Hinkle in my ear every day. And like Ainsley's like, Mom, 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 Mom.
Mm-hmm.
And this is like a creative outlet. So it's
Right.
very much
I, uh,
my
I
thing.
I I love what you said about the vision board, because I
Mm,
think that's something that is super powerful, and that's something that I've started doing. I like take
yeah.
pictures of like what I want to be like 10
Yeah.
years from now or 5 years from now. And I think
Yes.
that's so powerful, just like kind of imprinting your like subconscious mind.
Oh, mhm.
So like what is the future? Like, do you have any like big goals for your blog and like what it's gonna blow up into? Like a TV show, or like are you gonna write books or something like that?
Yeah. Well, and I love that you said that, because, and I hope that you don't. And I think boys are different than girls, but in this aspect, but I think I used to not tell anybody I had a vision board because
Hmm.
I thought people thought it was like kind of weird
Yeah.
and like,
Yeah.
oh, nice beach house you have on a picture next to,
You're
like,
so narcissistic.
yeah, okay, that nice Escalade, right?
Yeah.
But it's like we make our reality. And I think the minute that we all like get over the fact that, okay, you can focus on not having those things and being, hating everything, then you're going to hate everything.
Hmm.
Like it is as simple as that. It's like, but once you start believing, in things and putting it out there, you create it. You really do. And
Hmm.
I 100% believe that, because I can't tell you. Okay, so I actually have it here because I was working on things before we started talking. And I like carry around these notebooks. And I read the You Are a Badass book by Jen
Yes.
Sincero.
Good
My
book.
favorite book.
Yeah.
It's like my Bible. I'm not like super religious, but I like pick it up and I read it all the time. And it's so interesting when I like pick it up and I open it, it's to a part that I like need to hear for the day. It's like something
Yeah.
that I'm like, oh, this is what I needed. And so I jot down things every day. And I started doing that when I started. And looking back on the goals I had, like that I set, what I wanted, and like Kodiak Cakes is a client that I have. And I wanted to have a long term partnership with them.
Hmm.
And I remember writing it in my book every day. I'm going to have a long term partnership with Kodiak Cakes. I'm going to have 3 permanent contracts by the end of the year. Like I just kept writing it out, over and over and over again. And now going back reading through it, I'm like, about 85% of what I wrote out is actually happening now. And it's
Accomplished.
like,
That's
yeah. And
crazy.
I'm like, oh my gosh, like it does work. And I wish people would like believe it, like how much more
Yeah.
better our world would be. And I look on my vision board and it's like, I looked, I was like, oh my gosh, like I never would have thought would buy a brand new car this year. I never would have thought that. And I just did. And that was on my vision board. And it's like all these things. I'm like,
Yeah.
it's so keep doing it
Yeah.
because it's crazy how, and I do have a cooking show on my vision board. So that's definitely something that I see for the future. And again, I used to not say that out loud. Like people would be like, "Oh, what do you want?" I used to also not tell people I had a blog.
Mm-hmm.
So for the first like 3 months, I didn't tell people I had a blog. So you can imagine the traffic I drove to my blog if I don't tell people.
Right. Yeah.
Like I wasn't like, I don't know what I was scared of, but I didn't like, people would be like, oh, I saw something you posted. Like, do you have a food blog? And I'd be like, yeah, how's your day going?
Yeah.
Like, they're sincerely asking, and I'm like switching it around. So weird. But so once I actually started telling people I had a blog, and I'm like, yeah, this is what's on my vision board. So I definitely want to do a TV show, of a cooking show or something. I do want to have a cookbook. Um, and I want to live in Kirkwood,
Mm-hmm.
and which I do. But for a while, I do have Colorado on my vision board though too, because I love Colorado.
Co-
It'd be fun to be
Colorado
out
seems
there.
pretty awesome.
Yeah, I don't know, but I definitely see it for the long haul, and I do want to make it more of a full-time career. Absolutely. So
For
I
sure.
love teaching. But
Yeah.
I think eventually I would love to just do this full time.
Yeah, absolutely.